Okay, so we have a bill out. We know that, yay! And we have this big job to do to move it through conference now. So the session's going to be nuts and bolts some more. And there, yep, that's up. We need to know how to move a bill through Congress. That's one thing, so that we understand the steps and steps and pitfalls. It's Sunday morning, what can I say? And we need to build support for this bill, a lot of support. So in this session, we're going to do some different things. You don't need that, you know who I am. Congress 101, how a bill moves through Congress. Yes, I stole this right from Community. Strategic considerations, we'll get to that. They seem to be changing in our changing environment. A 2019 action plan should look familiar, actually, and where are our handouts? Are they, if somebody could just get those distributed while I talk, that'll be just fine. We'll need them in a little bit. And then some Q&A. So that's the plan. Okay. So I think it's kind of funny that I'm going to talk about civics. Most of us probably thought this was pretty boring when we were in school. I don't know about you. I think I got introduced to it in just about the worst possible way. My third grade teacher didn't know what to do with me because I tended to learn things very quickly. So one time her solution was to hand me a textbook on civics and put me in the book room by myself and tell me to read the chapters and answer the questions. It was really boring. So when I was thinking about doing this, I'm like, they're going to be so bored, Mark. What should I do? It also was quite lonely, sitting there in the book room. And it was totally useless information because nobody had any intention of letting me do anything with it, right? Okay, but I do have use for it now. And I'm not alone either, am I? All right, so here we go. And this does come from Community, from the thing called Questions About Congress, or Congress 101, we used to call it. So here's the short version. A bill is, and remember your Schoolhouse Rock? You can just hum it in your head quietly. A bill is introduced in either the House or the Senate. It's assigned to a committee. If the committee doesn't ever vote on it, the bill dies. The committee can mark up the bill by amending it and then vote on it. And if the bill passes on a committee vote, then it goes to the full House or Senate for a vote. If it passes in that chamber, then it goes to the other chamber where it goes through the committee process again. If both chambers pass the same bill, it goes to the president. But if they pass different versions, it goes to a conference committee. And if the conference committee reaches agreement on a joint version, it goes back to both chambers for a vote. If both chambers pass the conference committee version, it goes to the president, where we hope the president votes for it. If the president doesn't approve the bill, then Congress can try to override the veto by a 2/3 vote. So that's the overview. I bet that sounded familiar. We're going to do a little more detail now so that we have a fuller understanding of the challenges that lie before us. In my cynical moments, I don't have a lot of them, but I'm like, wow, there's a lot of ways to kill a bill, isn't there? So by the time we get done, we're all going to know a lot more about this. So this part's on slides, and I'm still going to go fast, and it's all right. There's no test at the end of this and no questions at the end of the chapter. All right. So introducing a bill. Any member of Congress can introduce a bill, and other members can join on as sponsors. Then it goes to committee. Okay. So it's referred to the appropriate committee by the Speaker of the House or the presiding officer in the Senate, but most often it's really made by the parliamentarian. Bills might go to more than one committee, and as you might realize, ours is in 3 committees in the House. And those 3 committees have to do with different parts of it. So ours is in Ways and Means, Energy and Commerce, and Foreign Affairs. And Foreign Affairs is because of the border adjustment part. All right. So the Speaker of the House can set time limits on committees, and failure to act on a bill is equivalent to killing it. But there's a thing called a discharge petition that can be signed by a majority of the House membership, 218 members, that could be used to force the release of a bill from committee. All right. So in committee, there's some steps. Comments about the bill's merits are often requested from government agencies. The bill can be assigned to a subcommittee by the committee chairman. They may hold hearings, and a hearing is an official meeting or session of a Senate, House, Joint, or Special Committee of Congress. It's usually open to the public, and it's to get information and opinions. That's different from the briefings, which are unofficial, that we've been holding through the years. Subcommittees report their findings to the full committee, and then the committee votes. Well, they hold a markup session first. And there's actually a few details there. If there's a lot of amendments made to a bill, the committee might order the introduction of a clean bill, which wipes the slate clean and replaces the original bill. Okay. And in the House, most bills go to the Rules Committee before reaching the floor. Okay, and that committee adopts the rules that will govern the procedures under which the bill will be considered by the House. So a closed rule will set strict time limits on debate and forbid the introduction of amendments. Okay, so those rules that they come up with can have a major impact on whether the bill passes. So at some point, we're going to start paying a lot of attention to the Rules Committee, aren't we? And it's possible to bypass the rules, too, the Rules Committee, with a 2/3 vote to suspend the rules. All right. Once it gets through committee, it goes to the floor, and the legislation is placed on the calendar. In the House, the Speaker decides what's going to reach the, let me just not skip over between my slides and my notes. All right, bills are usually placed on the calendars in the order in which they're reported. That sounds logical. Yet they don't usually come to the floor in that order, and some bills never reach the floor at all. So the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader in the Senate, they decide what will reach the floor and when. In the House, you can also bring it to the floor by a discharge petition. All right. In the Senate, it's a little simpler in the Senate. The legislation is placed on the legislative calendar, and scheduling of the legislation is the job of the Majority Leader. You know who that is? Mitch McConnell. And bills can be brought to the floor whenever a majority of the Senate chooses. All right. Do not ask me questions. All right. Debate. You can get this in more detail from Congress 101 on community, or Google it, and you will be learning more about it as we hit different stages, I suspect, too. All right, so debate's done differently in the House and the Senate. You're probably aware of that also. In the House, debate is limited by the rules that were formulated in the Rules Committee, and the debate is guided by what's called a sponsoring committee, and they divide time equally between proponents and opponents. And the committee decides how much time each person gets. So there's no filibuster in the House. And amendments have to be germane. They have to be relevant to the subject of a bill. There's no riders allowed in the House. Now, the Senate is quite different. Debate is unlimited unless cloture is invoked. So that's the filibuster. Members can speak as long as they want, and amendments need not be germane. So riders are often offered in the Senate, so they could stick anything onto a bill that they feel like, including entire bills. All right, so unless cloture, or that closing, is invoked, senators can use a filibuster to defeat a measure by talking it to death. So that's why we often say we need 60 votes in the Senate, is because that's what it takes to end a filibuster. You knew that. All right, suppose all has gone well. Then the bill is voted on. If it's passed, it goes to the other chamber, unless they've already passed a similar measure, a companion bill. If either chamber doesn't pass the bill, then it dies. If the House and the Senate pass the same bill, it goes to the President. If the House and the Senate pass different bills, they're sent to that conference committee. Most major legislation, and I think I'd call ours major, goes to a conference committee. So what's that like? In a conference committee, members from each chamber, from the House and from the Senate, form that committee, and then they meet and work out the differences. And the committee is usually made up of senior members who are appointed by the presiding officers of the committee that dealt with the bill. So the representatives from each house are going to work to maintain their version of the bill. So if the conference committee reaches a compromise, it creates a written conference report, and that goes to each chamber, and then each chamber has to vote, and approval by both of them means the bill has passed, and then it goes to the president. All right. A bill becomes law if it's signed by the president, or if it's not signed within 10 days and Congress is still in session. So it matters how much of the session is left when they vote on it. If Congress adjourns before the 10 days and the president has not signed the bill, then it doesn't become law. So that's the pocket veto. If the president vetoes the bill, it's sent back to Congress with a note listing his or her reasons. I don't know why I find that funny. And Congress can attempt to override the veto by a vote of 2/3 of those present. All right. If the veto is overridden in both chambers, then it becomes law. All right. So that was the whole chapter. All right. So you may have questions, but as I said, I'm actually not going to take them. And as you can tell, I'm no expert on this subject. I'm going to quote Taylor, who famously in November at the beginning of her little talk she was doing, she said, "Please hold your questions to the end because we won't have time for them." We're going to be quoting her forever. But mostly what I wanted you to get from that is that picture of there's a lot of twists and turns in front of us, that this is real. All right. So now let's talk about some strategic things, and then we'll talk about that action plan that you hopefully have on your table. And this is the part I have to really wing, actually, because every time I tried to get things settled, they seem to just sort of morph a little bit. In fact, I'm going to whine slightly. It used to be I could prepare a presentation for regional conferences, and we would have like 3 in the fall, and I'd get the first one done, and I could reuse it, and then I'd do the series in this January, February, March, and I could reuse it. And that just doesn't work anymore. In the fall, we didn't have the bill out for those. Then we had the bill out, but even between like the NorCal conference and the SoCal conference, things evolve. The Green New Deal, for example, we're having to think about what does that mean. And so some of you may be feeling some confusion, and I'm going to try to alleviate it. But literally, as I was talking between Wednesday and Thursday last week with Danny about this, it's like we sort of thought of different ways to think about and portray it. So you have to bear with me and with us, and keep tuning in as much as you can find time for like the latest about what's going on. I also want to just briefly restate a little of what I was trying to say yesterday morning, because I find that it's really often happens surprisingly often that I'm not as clear as I think I am, or people hear me say things I didn't say, or they don't hear things I did say, because it's just too much information all the time. So part of what I was trying to say yesterday was about working with the DC team in this period. Now that a bill is out, like we had to have some backroom discussions in order to get the bill negotiated with Republicans and introduced, right? And Danny was right there in those. Now the bill is out and different organizations are having their quiet little backroom discussions, because that's what they do in DC, right? And members of Congress have backroom discussions, and we can't be there. That's because they don't do them with people like us. Darn them, for the most part. There's a few liaisons who have gotten, close to being able to do that. But basically, that's why we have the DC staff, is because they're able to keep coming back and just be easier for them to trust. But the DC staff really understands, and I make sure they never forget also, that our power as an organization comes from you guys. We are not becoming a staff-driven organization, and we aren't one yet. The reason our folks have credibility in the back rooms with other organizations and members of Congress is because of the powerful work that you do. It really is pretty unusual how much work in the field a relatively small organization gets done. And while I said yesterday we've grown, we have, but when you compare ourselves to some of the really long-running big green groups, like our numbers of volunteers and our budget is still quite small. And the only reason we're getting heard is because of all the work that you guys do. So I never want you to think that you shouldn't be talking to me, the top levels, DC staff, sending through things to us through your state or regional coordinators, because we need to know what you're doing, and we will get to you what the DC team is doing, except sometimes there's stuff they can't share, right? Because that's the backroom life. So does that make a little bit of sense to you guys? Okay, all right, so do not stop what you're doing, because we'll be nothing without you. All right. Okay, so, but here's what I've been learning from DC. Well, first of all, we haven't talked much about the Climate Solutions Caucus, and they are still reorganizing. Reintroducing the legislation was a higher priority to Deutsch than reorganizing the Climate Solutions Caucus. I like that he made that decision. That's a higher priority for us, too. So as soon as we know anything official, you know, it's been in like the press that Rooney's going to be the Republican chair, but it's not official, so we're not saying that or putting it on the web or anything. Most likely that's true. But as soon as we have anything official, we'll get that to you. But meanwhile, we just have to wait. And at some point, that will become, joining the caucus will become a good supporting ask again. But it's not going to be our primary ask, is it? We know what that is. Okay. And then about lobbying, there, I had a slide on that. Okay, about lobbying in general. What Danny and I were talking about yesterday is, in a certain way, because we have a bill out now, we're all back in the position we were early on, where we're having our first meetings with our members of Congress, as in there's something we want them to understand and learn. Originally, we wanted them to understand and learn what's carbon fee and dividend. Now we want them to understand and learn what's the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. So supporting asks, in a certain way, are less important than they were in the last few years. And we're all working primarily with our members of Congress and aides to get them up to speed on the bill. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, so let's talk about what's on that slide. So the general thing with all members of Congress then is to educate them, find out what they like about it. Now I'm looking at the slide like you are. Find out what the barriers are, and then we want to keep showing them that there's support. We want to keep bringing that. So maybe that's you're bringing a lot of constituent comments. Maybe that's you're getting a lot of people to use the contact form, the email form, our online tool. Maybe you want to have a steady stream of people calling them, but you want them to be hearing from constituents. And that includes your senators. Okay. Of course, we also want them to hear from the grass tops and to see the key people that support that. And then because public polling is getting stronger, you want to bring that to them too. All right, so that's general outlines. Let's get to some specifics then. And I am going to take some questions when I get done with this part. And they're cards, so. Okay, so in the House, given that a lot of climate legislation, now that it's in the hands of Democrats in the House, we're expecting a lot of climate legislation to be put forth in the House. It's not just the Green New Deal. So building up the number of co-sponsors to make the Energy Innovation Act stand out is a priority. And because the Democrats are in control, we're not worried about balance with Republicans the way we were when it was controlled by the House. All right, so yeah, it's disproportionate now. We've got 13, and actually, I believe next week you'll hear Jan Schakowsky has joined. It's just not on congress.gov yet. So we've got 14 Democrats and 1 Republican. we are confident that there will be some more Republicans, but we're not worried that we have more Democrats. This is direct from Danny. And a bill is different from like the Climate Solutions Caucus. It was really strategic to keep the Climate Solutions Caucus balanced so that Republicans and Democrats were kind of on an equal footing in talking about climate, but it's not strategic in the House to slow down, to turn Democrats who want to sponsor away while they wait to get Republicans to join with them on the bill. So that's why it's different there. Okay. That said, the committees of jurisdiction are particularly important, so we don't mind if you work extra hard there. So that's Ways and Means, Energy and Commerce, and Foreign Affairs. But it's not a requirement. So any Democrat that's interested in sponsoring, they know how to get on a bill. Just encourage them to go ahead and do it. All right. Okay. Some good asks in the Senate then. For those of you, those 5 California Democrats who have sponsored, here's some things they could do to take some more steps. They could reach across the aisle and ask a Republican colleague to co-sponsor. They could also ask Democratic colleagues to co-sponsor with them, and again, you could encourage them to look at the committees of jurisdiction. They could also help you inform the community about the legislation. They could write an op-ed or hold a climate forum or a town hall on climate. So those are things that your sponsors can keep doing. Good asks for Democrats or Republicans who haven't sponsored yet. Co-sponsor the bill, please. Talk to one of the people who have sponsored it is always a good ask. Talking with their colleagues helps a lot. Ask them to read the bill summary and give us their feedback. And ask who they would like to see supporting and endorsing. So those are the kinds of places you might go with folks in the House. Okay, there's some additional ones for Republicans who haven't sponsored that we're still trying to move along. So that could be hold a town hall in the district on climate solutions, join the Climate Solutions Caucus. You have to wait on that till it's reorganized. Support legislation promoted by the Climate Solutions Caucus. Again, there we're waiting until they're reorganized, or any legislation that lowers emissions. So those are some additional ones. All right, the Senate is a little, that was fairly easy, right? Familiar, easy? All right, the Senate is interesting. This is the one I keep coming back to Danny on. So obviously, we want them to reintroduce the Senate bill. And the sooner the better, and before June is kind of still a stretch goal, before our June lobby day. But what Danny says is most useful to the efforts there is if we push the bipartisan part. And that's really because of the dynamics playing out these days where, for example, the Green New Deal could help encourage people to move towards the center, or it could blow us apart to the edges in the country. And so we want to be a voice that's pushing towards the center. That bipartisan voice is really important right now. Another factor with the Senate bill is that one of the things we understand a little clearer is Senator Coons is a really, really great original sponsor. He's working really hard right now, particularly on finding Republicans. And we'd like 3 to 5 Republicans with him. That would be just super ideal when we reintroduce it. And what gives him the most room to work is if we push bipartisanship, rather than if we push a lot of Democratic senators towards him right now, so that he can stay focused on the Republican ones. So this is nuanced here, all right? Because yes, we want all senators to know about the bill, like I said generally, to learn about the bill. But we also want you to push the bipartisan angle so that we can try to keep a positive climate going. And I lost my train of thought there. But that was probably sufficient. With Republicans, senators, which you guys don't have, we do still want them encouraging getting on the bill. All right, very directly. So if that's confusing, you can ask me some questions and we'll try to clarify it. Hopefully it wasn't. All right. And then, it's likely that there'll be a vote on the Green New Deal resolution. As far as I can tell, Senator McConnell is just really rubbing his hands with glee about forcing senators who to take a position on that then they can club them with. So what we want to do is basically not worry about it. That's an interesting thing. However your senator votes on it, it's just fine. They're trying to figure out the best way to vote on that for themselves in their political situation and their measurement of the political will, of the will in their district. And we don't need to worry about it. However they vote, it doesn't mean you can't go right back to them and they can't vote for the Energy Information Act, whether they support or don't support the Green New Deal resolution. It's really not relevant to the Energy Innovation Act. So we'll just watch it. Yeah. All right, good asks in the Senate. Republicans only, so this one won't help you guys. Hold a Senate hearing on solutions to the climate problem. We're trying to get the people away from focusing on the science, because as we heard yesterday from Shane, that's not very powerful on the Republican side, and focus on solutions. Ask if your senator would be willing to write a joint op-ed on a climate-related topic that impacts your state, and ask them to review the Yale survey and tell you their impressions of it. Danny is working on rewriting. We're going to separate. Right now, we have our primary ask for our lobby meetings, that one-page document we ask you to leave behind. We are working, and we'll have that out by the March action sheet, to separate that from one combined ask into a House ask, which is co-sponsor the bill, and a Senate ask, which is support the bill, learn about the bill, and support make climate a bridge, not wedge issue, like Danny was saying. So you can watch for that. And these are the asks that are shaping up to be on the Senate leave behind. So co-sponsor is one way to be bipartisan. It's all about how to be bipartisan. You could co-sponsor that. The second one, you could introduce and co-sponsor other bipartisan legislation. What does that get us if they do other? It gets the senators working together on climate legislation and talking to each other. So I bolded bipartisan there. At hearings, focus on solutions rather than the science, and schedule briefings in your state to build public will. All right. Okay, oh good, we're almost up to Q&A. So, organizing. This is like, what's your job out there? So again, lots of constituent emails, letters, and calls supporting the bill to both the House and Senate. That's like the wind under their wings. Lots of endorsements on the bill website, and high visibility through media, social media, and local outreach are the key things. All right. So I'm going to pause now and look at my watch and see what questions we have. So they're on cards. Do you have some, Madeleine? Is that, Sarah?
We don't have any just yet.
Oh, so you have some there. All right. Whoa, look at this guy. He breaks the rules. And because there are times to do that, I'm going to read his question. Oh. We want you to use fee. He says, yesterday I said words matter. Does the DEC office want us to use tax or fee? We still like fee. There, I was as short as Danny almost.
All right, this one asks, after the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act passes, what is CCL going to do next?
I like that person. And the great thing is I've been raising that question rather annoyingly for a couple of years. And so the answer is we're studying it. I'm interested in your ideas. Feel free to send them. We will look for things that build on our strengths that we know are effective and that are science-based. And there are a number of possibilities, but we're studying them.
All right, thank you. This next one is, when do you think the Climate Solutions Caucus will be reorganized?
I couldn't tell you. That's a DC question. I'll just say I hope soon, because I think it'd be good to have it soon.
What should we do vis-a-vis the 3 committees of jurisdiction?
If you have members who are on those committees, then prioritize them, all right, for sponsorship and education, and really work to beef things up in those districts where you have folks there.
Sorry, just one moment.
That's okay. I know of one organization that every 20 minutes they make everybody stop talking and just rest for 30 seconds.
This question asks, can the Senate hold hearings without a bill?
Yeah. And that's one of our asks, is that they do hold hearings of the Republican senators because they're in charge, and focused on solutions.
All right, and more generally, where does our bill stand in the House?
It's in committee. That's a very short answer, but that's basically where it is in that process. It's in committee, and we are gathering sponsors. And we, organizationally, are helping the original sponsors do that.
And regarding the committees, is there a plan to get one or more of the committees to hold hearings or to get an OMB markup?
I do wish we had Danny here. So the Ways and Means is holding a hearing more broadly in April, I believe, and we've been asked to submit testimony. I don't think we've been asked to do that live. And so that is happening, and there may well be other hearings. And if there are hearings on the bill, there's nothing like, no hearings on the Energy Innovation Act are scheduled right now. You will know that when it happens. I guarantee you.
Does it help the Senate if the bill has some strong Republican support in the House?
I'm speaking without knowledge here. It seems to me like it must.
What are we doing to get sponsors of the Green New Deal to jump onto this bill, and have our people been in contact with Markey or Ocasio-Cortez to piggyback on the Green New Deal, since it currently has so much momentum?
So that's a tricky one. Yes, we have been working on contact with Ocasio-Cortez. Both her constituents have been, and the DC office. So like we talked about a little bit yesterday, that was probably in the leadership session. Our relationship to that, to the Green New Deal, is very appreciative of the energy that they bring and the push they bring and the urgency they bring on climate change. And the perspective that what our bill does will facilitate the goals that movement has, right? It will make a powerful difference on greenhouse gas emissions and facilitate the things they're trying to achieve. And and ours is out and has support and ready to roll, so let's roll with that. What we're not saying is it's part of the Green New Deal or has to be part of the Green New Deal, because over on the right, they're like, that's socialism. And if over on the right, they look at the Energy Innovation Act and go, that's part of the Green New Deal, then it's going to be harder to get Republican buy-in on it. So we're walking a really careful line here, and I think we've done a great job so far where the door is open cautiously on the side of Green New Deal folks. They haven't said, no, 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 we hate that bill, right? And they haven't said, yes, we love it, it's ours. And that's perfect. I want the door open there, but I don't want it to be so embraced that it becomes part of what is seen as a very far left package. So you can see how carefully I answered that question. You get to be that careful too.
And a question about how other ways to support the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. Someone asked, would an advertising or public relations campaign help move political will in Republican Senate areas?
It might. We are under-resourced in that area, I would say, and I'm open to suggestion. Yeah.
Next, do we know what Nancy Pelosi thinks of the bill, or if she would put it to a vote?
If we did know, I don't think I'd say. That's something you wouldn't want to give away.
What website do community leaders go to endorse the bill?
Oh, the energyinnovationact.org. If I was up on internet right now, I'd show it to you. But put it in your phone. If you haven't been there yet, I encourage you to go there and check it out. So it's a really easy URL to remember, because what did I just say it's called? Energyinnovationact.org, all lowercase, no spaces, no dots. And what you'll see there is a description of the bill, pictures of all the sponsors, and then you'll see quotes from newspaper articles about the bill, and if you keep scrolling down, you'll see statements, approving statements. We didn't put any negative statements on there. Approving statements about the bill from various organizations, and the organizations cover a mixture of left and right, so it's a really nice thing there. And then there's another tab that shows supporters, and so all the endorsements that have been gathered so far, they've been screened to make sure that they were real endorsements and that they were actually prominent people and not just my next door neighbor who was enthusiastic. And all of those are listed there too, and some of the more high profile people are highlighted at the top. So you can see all of that right there on that website, and you can show that to people too.
This is a little bit in reference to a plan that Tasha brought up earlier, asking each chapter to send a Republican to DC. They're asking if it might also be strategic to send a progressive from each chapter as well.
Yeah. I'm only laughing because that part's not hard in CCL. You saw the way the balance is amongst our membership. So I assume we'll have progressives. We have a goal nationally for DC of sending a constituent of any political affiliation from every congressional district to Washington, DC. And that's something that you might think about here in California. You guys do a great job of sending lots of people there. And like everywhere, some places have more people going and some places have less. So if there's things you can do to reach out to districts that don't have folks coming yet, that would be really, really helpful. Because it's much more powerful to have constituents there.
What can businesses do to help lobby for the bill?
Oh, that's great. The best thing is if they'll go on their own and talk to their members of Congress about supporting the bill. Like that's gold. The second thing is if they'll go with us and support the bill. The next thing they can do is publicly speak up about supporting the bill in any number of forums. All right, I'm gonna actually take just two more.
All right, this one asks, how can a liaison and or the member of Congress find out who has endorsed the bill via the Energy Innovation Act website?
So you can see them listed on the website, and our tech department's been a little overstretched. So now the community is out, and most people know how to log in. And most things that didn't quite work right yet are fixed. There's some more of those. A very high next priority for them is to generate reports for you where you know how right now you get reports of who supports carbon fee and dividend and that are in the Grass Tops engagement tracker. The bill endorsements from the bill site are getting put into that, and we're figuring out, like, are we giving you a separate report just for the bill endorsers? Are we merging it into the other? There's like a whole lot of little questions like that we have to figure out about what those reports look like. But it shouldn't be too long before you start having those reports sent to liaisons and state coordinators. I don't remember if they go to group leaders or not. Okay, one more.
All right, last question. It's a two-parter, though. How was CCL involved in formulating the bill, and are the three committees of equal importance in the process?
I would say Ways and Means is the most important committee. So all through last year, there was a set of Republicans that were meeting with our DC staff, supporting them, and those Republicans were talking with each other about what would have to be in the bill for them to support it. All right, and so we were part of that, and when they said that there was something they wanted, we helped them come up with the right language for the bill, and then when that was settled, then we also had to make sure that worked for Deutsch and the Democrats who wanted to be on it, so we were very much a part of that. That said, the chief sponsor really owns the bill. So how it moves forward, who gets on it, what's in there, what bargaining goes on, they really drive that. We don't. All right. Was that the two-parter?
Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's look a little more at what do you guys do. Let me keep an eye on my time here. All right, so you've got an action plan in front of you, right? Looks like this. All right. And it starts with a summary, which I put on this slide. And that summary is because 4 pages can feel a little overwhelming. So we're like, if you only have attention for half a page, look at the top half a page. Because I know people don't read everything I write or listen to everything I say, and I don't blame you. All right. So what did we highlight? We highlighted first, grow your chapter, because there's a lot that we want to get done. All right, and so just some quick reminders there that as new people come in, it's really useful to have a way to incorporate them. There's nothing that upsets somebody more, we've learned from surveying them, than somebody's got new energy for a CCL group and nobody gets in contact with them. Like, they really don't like that. All right, plus there may be people right now who have stopped coming who might be interested in coming back, so you might check back through your list and reach out to some people who maybe dropped off. That divide and share the work is really essential. I know some of us like to do everything ourselves and hate to ask people for help, but the best thing you can do to grow your chapter is to let go of that and actually ask people to help. They're more likely to do stuff if you ask them. It's okay if they say no sometimes. They will. Then you just ask something easier. All right, so, and then just that way, by growing your group, you build up your capacity to do multiple things. All right, the second thing we highlighted is having a liaison. So for those of you who aren't familiar with that, we found it useful to have one person designated as the main point of contact for the member of Congress and their staff. Because, if 6 different people from 6 different chapters or from within the same chapter are all contacting them and saying, could we have a meeting with you, it gets confusing to them, and you can't build a relationship with a group of people the way you can with a single person. That said, the liaisons, we really encourage them and want them to be working with a team. We don't want them working alone. We just want them being the primary person doing the emailing and phone calling out to like the scheduler, for example. So if you don't have a liaison, you have pretty good liaison coverage in California, but if you don't have one or there's been turnover, find one. And you want somebody who's not in it for 3 months, but who's in it for a few years, ideally, because you don't want to turn that relationship over every 6 months. All right, and if you have a liaison, find out what can they use to help that relationship with the member of Congress. Okay, we've already talked about the grassroots and the grass tops. Grassroots, that's like reaching out into your community and doing presentations and tabling. Grass tops, those are the influential people in the community that you want to reach for. And that's very local, who's influential. You know, in one place it might be your local politicians or a particular local politician. In another place it might be the head of the United Way, I don't know. And then we're just like, start easy and grow. Start with the simple things and build on them. All right. So the rest of this sheet goes into more details about each of those things. And it's based on our levers of political will. And you might wonder, what are those levers of political will? Those are the way we categorize actions in CCL. So we say there's 5 levers: media, lobbying, grass tops outreach, grassroots outreach, and chapter organizing. So this document gives lots of ideas for each of those. Here's how I want to suggest you relate to this document. If you're newer, what we suggest is that you do what lights you up, as Mark Reynolds likes to say, our executive director. What would be most satisfying for you to do? So satisfaction can come from using the skills that you have, that you enjoy using. Satisfaction can come from learning new skills, like, I can't believe I just wrote that letter to the editor. I never did that before. Satisfaction can come from being with people that you enjoy. So maybe there's just somebody you want to spend more time with in the group, so go do what they're doing. Or satisfaction can come from doing something that you know matters, that it get done. And I'm grateful to people who do that. If you've been part of your group for a while and you already know what lights you up, keep doing it. And then for this partner exercise we're going to give her for this meeting, I want to suggest that you widen your focus for just a moment, for a few moments. This is a long list of actions, and what I'd like to ask the experienced folks in this group to do is to imagine how much of that list could your group undertake, all right? And then ask yourself, what could you do to help expand the capacity of your group? Because we can't just leave that all to the group leader or group leaders. That's an all-hands-on-deck job, expanding the capacity. Sometimes there's really small things that make a difference, like inviting somebody to try out a new task. I know that somebody who grew into a key member in our chapter basically moved from observing us for 1.5 years into getting deeply engaged when another member in the chapter just said to him, "Hey, Steve, when are you going to start doing something?" He wasn't known for his diplomacy, but it worked. And you know, so sometimes it's a little thing like that that makes a difference in your group. All right. So what I'm going to do is give you a couple of minutes now to just look at the list and turn to someone and either talk about what lights you up that you're going to focus on or what you might do to expand the capacity of your group. So I'm going to give you about 4 minutes to do that. And you know, maybe like really, literally just look at it and talk to each other.